I'm sure you do love it, but should you buy it? I know that searching for a home is daunting. There are times when you can really get frustrated. For many people, it is a tough process, but there are certain types of homes that I always tell my clients, no, don't buy it. I would not buy it. I've looked at a lot of houses, hundreds, and I've helped a lot of people over the years buy houses. And in my experience, based on looking for personal investments and for others, there are definitely some homes that you want to stay away from. So this week, I'm going to share with you the types of houses that you should never buy. I hope you find this video valuable, and I think it'll help some of you save a lot of money when looking for houses in Maine, or really in any state. Basically, everyone wants to avoid a costly mistake. Let's get into it. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, myself and the subscribers that return to this channel will appreciate your insight. Even if you disagree with me, that's fine. I want to hear your opinion. Okay, the first type of home that I would never buy in Maine, ready for this, are homes that are 100 years or more old. Guys, I love me an old home. I like the old character and the charm they can bring to a neighborhood, whether it is the craftsmanship inside or the architecture on the outside. There is just something about an old house that catches my eye, but I wouldn't buy one. Yeah, I understand that the older homes that you are looking at has been renovated, but there are certain things that come along as baggage with these old homes that you need to be aware of that could lead to a potential problem. These issues can dig deep into your pocket in order to fix them. And so I would just never buy one. There are just too many potential surprises that will pop up along the way. First and foremost is the plumbing and electrical work. Many of these old homes have lead pipes. You might see plumbing upgrades under the sinks or, places where the plumbing is exposed. But what about the pipes that are hidden in the walls, behind the plaster or drywall? This happens all the time. The owner needs something fixed. They don't want to get into tearing the walls out to explore the extent of the problem. And when they go to sell the house, they neglect to tell their agent about the lead pipes. And so it isn't on the disclosure. This stuff happens all of the time. Maybe you have visions of a fixer-upper, maybe fixing up all the trim, the electrical outlets, maybe tile the floors and do some painting. In the process of maybe replacing something, you find a bigger issue and then wham! You are facing a major problem like knob and tube electrical work that is still being used in the home. And guess what? That is probably a problem that you should consider replacing due to the potential fire hazard that it creates. For example, if you run into knob and tube electrical during a minor bathroom fix-up, finding old, bad electrical work could lead to a major renovation that requires a gut job of the entire bathroom, including the walls down to the studs. And you'll be putting holes in the walls of other rooms in order to trace the problem. It's an expensive nightmare. I'm sure you're already seeing dollar signs as I say this. I want to take a moment and introduce myself. My name is Michael Patterson, and my partner and daughter is Margaret. We are Maine real estate agents, and if you're interested in property in Maine, please give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or our favorite, schedule a Zoom. We can help you make a smooth move to Southern Maine. All right, lead pipes, by the way, as everyone knows, are dangerous to your health if they are delivering drinking water. Let's listen to the helpful home inspector on YouTube as he explains how to identify if lead pipes are coming into your home.
We generally have a lot of lead water laterals, which is the pipe that goes from your house out to the street. Okay, it's your main water pipe coming in, all right? And a lot of them need to be changed, and that's in the process. We're working on that, okay? However, you're basically looking at some interior lead water pipes. So this is a lead water pipe. You can tell because it has this knob of lead here that's used to make the connection to the galvanized steel pipe.
And knob and tube electrical work is dangerous as well because few contractors are familiar with them and they can lead to fires. Finding knob and tubing wiring in an old home can be a problem as well. Let's listen to KC Home Inspectors as he shows and explains the dangers of having this type of wiring in your home.
All right, I'm here on a home inspection on a 100-year-old home where we have knob and tube wiring in place. It is covered. It is not to be covered. Knob and tube wiring is to release the heat from the heat resistance from the electrical current going through the wiring into the atmosphere. When you cover it with insulation, you've just prevented that from being able to happen. Also, moisture issues and stuff like that happen. It is a fire risk. Most insurance companies will not insure the home in this condition with knob and tube wiring buried under insulation. Most of them don't even like knob and tube wiring at all anymore because of this type of situation can happen.
Old, dried out homes burn really well. Even if the wiring was replaced in the 1950s or 60s, the insulation around the wiring is likely dried out, cracked, and brittle, which could be exposing the copper wire that carries all of the current to your appliances.
Today I was asked to inspect an older panel which had some of the original cloth-covered wiring. I typically recommend replacing this wire for a few reasons. The first and most important reason being that it was installed in the 60s and the rubber coating on the wire is almost always deteriorated and brittle.
Well, guess what? Most families use a lot of electricity today, which means more current traveling over those wires, and guess what? More current over small wires makes them heat up. Think about how the filaments work in light bulbs. If the wires are pressing against dry wood in the walls, it could start a fire. And yeah, this is how many fires get started in older homes. Most old homes just don't have the electric infrastructure to carry lots of current to all of the appliances, demanding lots of power. That means the wires in the wall are heating up, and that can lead to fires. The wiring in these old homes is often a hodgepodge of do-it-yourself fixes, which would never pass today's electrical codes. And there's an obvious reason for that. It's dangerous. And what if that old house has sawdust insulation? You can bet that that stuff burns really well. Tens of thousands of dollars is what it's going to cost to replace the old plumbing and electrical work, because you have to patch up the walls, floors, and ceilings after all of the work. No one wants to get caught up in a renovation like that, especially when you have to destroy a lot of what is original that attracted you to the home in the first place. Now you have to destroy it and remove it because you can't buy that floor or ceiling anymore that you really loved about the home. The potential issues with plumbing and electrical should be enough to deter you from an old home. If it isn't, think about asbestos. Most people think of it as only used to wrap hot water pipes to prevent heat loss. That is not the only place you're going to run into asbestos in an old house. It can be used in old floor tiles as well. Let's listen to WJ's reaction when he discovers asbestos tiles underneath tiles that he's removing during a renovation.
Okay, I don't have a test kit and I'm thinking about going to go get one, but judging from what I'm seeing and what I've read, this most likely right here is asbestos tile. I accidentally plucked up a couple because they were stuck to the back of this overlay tile. So I probably won't be messing with this anymore, but those are 9x9s right there. And judging by the age of this facility, those most likely are asbestos tiles because this is from the 1950s. They overlaid it, of course, but just looking at it, I'm not going to mess with it.
So that is another renovation that you may end up dealing with. And of course, it's expensive. Not only because you have to tear it all up, because you have to put down new floors, but the tiles have to be disposed of properly, which can also be an additional expense. You might be thinking that you'll dispose of them yourself, but you should be hiring a contractor that specializes in asbestos. These guys come in with hazmat suits, respirators, and eye protection in order to remove this stuff, and for good reason. Asbestos is dangerous. Think about all of the mesothelioma lawsuits as a result of people working with asbestos years ago in the military. You want to stay away from an old home that has asbestos. If you are looking to buy or sell a home in Maine, Margaret and I have some resources available in the description down below. The relocation guide will help you compare all of the towns in York County for things like population sizes, school systems, proximity to shopping, and whether or not there's a great downtown area that's good for walking. Then there's the Seller Success Guide, which will help you prepare your home for the highest possible price. It cuts to the chase on things that will help improve the buyer appeal and ultimately expedite the sale of your home. Both are free, and the links to these resources is in the description down below. What else? Well, old homes can have unsafe features. Sometimes the features that give the home charm are hazardous. Maybe they have a stairwell with steep, narrow, or uneven steps. Perhaps there is a retired dumbwaiter or a laundry chute, or maybe even banisters along the stairwell with spaces between them that toddlers can fit through. I especially don't like non-working fireplaces. That reeks of home maintenance neglect. Someone visiting the home could easily make the mistake of trying to light a fire in one. If the fireplace has been retired because it's unsafe, that should tell you something. Old fireplaces can't always be reflued, and masonry between the bricks eventually dries out. This leads to cracks, and eventually the mortar falls out from the bricks. If the chimney is buried in the walls, you have to rip down the walls to expose the chimney so that all of the bricks can be repointed. For most of us, this is not an expense we want to incur. If you have kids, these issues should be a red flag for you. Many kids would love to play with dumbwaiters and laundry chutes during a game of hide and seek. They are super cool, but can be dangerous, so you may want to spend money to close them off. Next is regarding the floodplain. You're probably saying, duh, but with today's weather patterns, even if the house is in a 100-year floodplain, I probably wouldn't buy it unless it was built with flood considerations, like a house on pilings with a garage maybe underneath. But you still have to consider the insurance premium, and Maine is one of the highest in the country, coming in with an average premium at almost $2,000 per year for the typical home in a flood zone. If you live on the beach, it could be as high as $10,000 or more per year. With the weather patterns the way they have been in the last few years, my guess is that these premiums are going to continue rising. Most people don't want to pay that fee. And guys, don't rely on FEMA flood maps. I lived on Wells Beach for over 10 years, and the FEMA flood maps don't tell you that the streets are completely flooded with water several times per year due to extremely high tides. To find out about something like this, you have to go speak with the neighbors that live around the house that you are interested in. Even if the seller says it is never flooded, that doesn't mean it won't flood on you. I get it. You love the house, the price is right, but when it floods, it won't be worth it. I've lost 2 houses to flooding and was told in the years leading up to Hurricane Ian that the neighborhood had never flooded. Guys, be very careful buying in a flood zone. I might still do it, but the house is going to be on pilings and way up in the air. For most people, I would say don't do it. In time, in all likelihood, you will find another home that you will like just as much. Okay, what else would I avoid? Underground storage tanks. Even if the tank has been decommissioned, there is a reason the current owner didn't pay to have it removed. It can be crazy expensive, especially if an environmental issue is uncovered. Hear me out on this one, guys. Listen to what Maine law requires to remove an underground oil tank. You have to notify the following departments 10 days prior to removal. First, the Department of Environmental Protection, and second, the local fire department. And depending on the situation, the removal must be supervised by a certified underground oil tank installer. The organization removing the tank may have to test the soil, and if they find considerable contamination, the costs to clean up the mess could go into the tens of thousands of dollars. Guys, unless you absolutely know what you're getting into, run from a house that has underground oil tanks. If you really want the house, negotiate with the seller to remove the tanks before you close on the house. Let the seller take the risk, and if they won't do it, I would not buy the house. Just imagine if a neighbor ever claims that the oil spilled on your property contaminated their well. What a nightmare. The next type of house that I would never buy is a house being flipped by an LLC. I'm not saying that all LLCs are the same. There are certainly some ethical ones out there, but a lot of these flippers are inexperienced and they're hiring inexperienced contractors. And they are doing a poor job of renovating their homes. You'll know it when you see it because when you walk into the house, you'll see a lot of cosmetic issues. As soon as I see problems with the paint being an obvious rush job, I want to leave the property. A new terrible paint job is a big red flag. Good contractors generally take pride in their work, so a terrible paint job means the owner of the property didn't care enough to pay for a quality job. I start thinking it was just a rush flip. It's sort of like walking into a restaurant and seeing food on vacant tables, a carpet that is smeared with food, a hostess podium that is a mess. You can often judge a kitchen based on how the dining room looks. The point I'm trying to make is that if the paint is bad, I start thinking about issues in the wall, septic problems, electrical issues, things like that. You can go on Zillow and see the history of sales on the home, which also allows you to see how the price has been moving around on the property. If the sinks have flex drains underneath them, if you find paint on the floor, if the toilet is crooked, stuff like that, I would run from the property because it is what you're not seeing that is probably really bad. In my mind, shoddy work on a remodel smells of a seller who is unethical. Never buy it. Don't do it. Okay, here's the last issue that would steer me away from a house purchase. A home with over-the-top custom features. Over-the-top custom work or a kitchen that is really ornate might be a turn on to you, but when you go to sell it, it will limit the number of buyers who are interested in it. Really fancy windows or fancy roof tiles are extremely expensive to repair, and that's if you can even find a contractor willing to do it. Again, you might love that fancy stuff, but when you go to sell it, it could be a turnoff to many buyers. Chances are anyway that over time you're going to get bored with it, like the seller may have, and it's going to cost you money to change it out. Things like a built-in fish tank, for example, might sound like fun, but after a few months of work to maintain it, you could find yourself wanting to get rid of it, and it's going to cost you money to do that. The same could be true with all of the appliances. Fancy stoves with fancy range hoods, trash compactors, extra large refrigerators. It costs money to fix that stuff, and we all know that eventually it all breaks and has to be replaced. I had an oversized counter-depth commercial refrigerator fail on me, and when I went to replace it, it cost me almost $10,000. You need to know what you're getting into, and fancy does not always mean it will make you happier. I would avoid a house with over-the-top custom finishes that are going to cost you more in the long run. Nope, I wouldn't buy it. Stay away from it. Final tip, guys, when you see a property for sale on Zillow or a site like that, ask your real estate agent for the property disclosure. You can't get that from Zillow. You generally have to get it from your agent. The disclosure should list a bunch of details about the property that you will want to know about, such as the age of the roof, the last septic pumping, the last service on the heat and AC system, and any flooding that may have occurred. The seller is supposed to answer all of those questions honestly. Ask to see the property disclosure before you even go look at the property, and always talk with the neighbors. Okay, if you want to learn more about what it's like to live in Maine, watch this next video.